Welcome to Agency Bytes, a podcast for agency owners, hosted by agency veteran and coach Steve Guberman. Agency Bytes is a podcast focused on delivering actionable agency information from agency experts in about 25 minutes. Why 25 minutes? Because who has the attention span for much more these days? And you can squeeze in a listen between meetings with time for a bathroom break or coffee refill before your next meeting.
Welcome to Agency Bytes, a podcast dedicated to helping agency owners thrive. I'm Steve Guberman from Agency Outsight, where I coach creative entrepreneurs to build the business of their dreams. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Jason Swenk. He's the agency advisor and coach who guides marketing agencies through a proven framework for growing their agency faster. Jason is the author of the definitive guide to growing an agency from scratch to 2 8-figure enterprises. He's one of the most sought-after advisors to agencies worldwide. Thanks to his 8-system framework that has proven successful in scaling his own agency. His expertise has attracted clients like AT&T, Hitachi, and Lotus Cars, ultimately leading to the successful sale of his agency. Jason, again, man, thrilled to have you. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Steve.
Yeah, this is exciting. Definitely, kind of watched from afar and consumed a lot of your content and things that you coach agencies about. You want to give kind of your quick background on like what your scale story was, what your sales story was, and how you got where you are now?
Yeah, I was an accidental agency owner. One of my friends looked like Justin Timberlake, and so I created a fake band, fake website called In Shit, and it got popular. I started doing $500 websites in 1999. And then just kept scaling that to, $1 million sites. And then eventually we grew that to a pretty big company and had a really good exit. And then didn't know what I was going to do afterwards. I was kind of depressed. Started an iPhone app, hated that because I have to do something, right? Like we have to build something. And then had some of my old competitors, maybe a year, 2 years later, were like, "Hey, how'd you kick her ass all the time? How'd you do this? How'd you sell?" And I was like, "Oh, I just did it this way." I was like, "Here, do this, do this, do this." And then my wife was like, "Well, you should charge for that." And then I started a podcast 10 years ago called the Smart Agency Masterclass, and been doing that ever since. And, just been, and then had an opportunity to start an agency 3 years ago with a number of different people. And we've grown that to a little over 30 million.
Wow.
Without ad spend. No ad spend.
No ad spend. Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen you mention that. Like we've grown to this without, spending on ads. I think it's interesting. Friends would be like, "Hey, how'd you do that?" And it was probably the same question I got. Can I pick your brain over lunch? And it's like, you're going to buy me a meal and I'm going to like divulge all this valuable information to you. Oh, wait, I can charge for that. Yep. Was it that kind of an approach?
I just enjoyed it. Like because honestly, when I sold the first agency, I felt a little lost because I associated myself with being an agency owner, like because I did that for 12 years, and
that was your
I started it when I was 22. So that my whole being to myself was related to that. I didn't realize, until later on, I was like, look, I didn't sell my soul. I'm still creative. I'm still innovative. I'm still, blah, blah, blah. Right. And, what I do doesn't define me. And then it helped me out going forward.
That's a tough journey to go through. I had the same exact thing. Like my identity was wrapped up in the business. People knew me as the guy from that shop. And so it took me a good year or two to learn how to be an employee after my exit.
Well, you lasted a lot longer than I did. I lasted 9 months. I was just lucky that we sold again because my tour of duty was 2 years, or the event when we sold the agency again, and it was just a quick exit. So I was like, thank God.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you still get to so as an accidental agency owner, you were a designer thinking I'll design and build something. Do you still get to do design? Is that still part of what fulfills you?
No, honestly, I just like the creative process. I can look at a site and go, man, you should be doing this, right? Like, because I was always involved on that. Like we designed, like we built LegalZoom, like we did Lotus Cars, we did Porsche. So, like we did a lot of these things, and there's science behind a lot of those designs, and I just enjoyed that, even though I was horrible at science. But I understood kind of, how people would look at it or where they would look first, and that's what I really enjoyed. And I just like solving problems. Like,
Yeah.
like you, I talk to agency owners all day long, and they're like, well, can you solve my problems? I was like, well, I'll solve this problem, but that problem will create another problem. And
Right.
if you don't like the problem solving, you're in the wrong type of business. Like, go be
Yeah.
an airline pilot. All you have to do is just fly the plane, you shut it off, and then you go home, right? Like, that's a lot of freedom to people.
Yeah.
Agency owners are cursed with, we're always thinking about the business, regardless what we're doing. Only time I don't think about business is like when I'm flying, like, because I'm concentrating on not dying.
Yeah, I think it's hard to shut down the end of the day, the end of the week, or whatever, whether it's because you're so engulfed in the business, you're responsible for other people's livelihood, your team, clients are counting on you for their success and their promotion within their business, or, at their job or whatever. And there's a lot of weight on agency owners. And the freedom that you get when you learn how to balance between the two and like shut it off. I don't know that I did that at all as an agency owner.
It took me a while to figure it out. I mean, it took me almost shutting down at the time when I thought about quitting and just shutting it down. We were over the 2 million mark. And I literally took an interview for a marketing position because I was miserable. And
Mm-hmm.
they asked me, they were like, what do you want to do every day? And what don't you ever want to do ever again?
Yep.
And I couldn't answer it in the interview because I was like, I don't know. But I went home that night and I thought about it. I'm like, oh. So I just started concentrating on all the things I don't want to do. I don't want to do account management. I don't want to do sales. I don't want to do follow up. I don't want to do HR. I don't want to do bookkeeping. All the different things that were falling on my shoulders, right? Like, I was the
Mm-hmm.
total, like, we had 20 people at the time, I think, or maybe 15. Every decision was flowing through me. So it was like
Yep.
15 to 20 toll booth lanes, but all of them were just going through mine. And then by doing that exercise of thinking all the things I hate, but then I realized, I was like, well, here's the things that I really love that gives me energy that I want to go do. So what are the things I need to say no to? What are the things I can automate? What are the things I can delegate? Who do I need to hire? Who do I need to become?
Mm-hmm.
And then I was able to switch it. And then guess what? Our agency really started rapidly growing, and we grew over 8 figures, and then we were acquired a couple of years later.
So that pivotal point, and I was at the same place at about $1 million in revenue, where also miserable. Also, this can't be the answer. And I also took an interview, got a job offer, high level. And my brother was like, "Dude, you will be absolutely miserable. You built something. Either continue to build it or sell it." And that was like for me the pivotal point. But so when you were like, and it's a great exercise. I go through that with clients all the time. What do you want to do? What do you not want to do that's on your plate? Was that like your I guess pivotal moment to learn how to scale, or like really delegation leading to scale?
Well, it was more of realizing that it gave me clarity.
Hmm.
And I think when you can get, especially with a lot of us that are accidental agency owners, right? Like, we're just slammed into the mix. Like, my first client asked me to send him an invoice. I didn't know what an invoice was. Like, so there was lots of lessons,
Mm-hmm.
throughout that I had to figure out. And I was just being reactive to the market rather than being proactive. So then I had to figure out, going, well, what do I want this business to be? Like, how do I design this around myself? And a lot of times, we've bought 10 agencies in the past couple of years. And a lot of times when I'm talking to an agency owner, if they don't have clarity of where they're going, and their team doesn't know where they're going, I'm walking away.
Mm-hmm.
Or if
Interesting.
like, I'll chat with an agency that is over $1 million in EBITDA net profit,
Mm-hmm.
and right, and you would think, well, I'll give you a 5x multiple, you're worth $5 million. But then you dive into it a little bit more, and you're going, that owner does sales, that owner does delivery. I'm like, you're worth
Okay.
nothing, because if you start working for us and we buy you, you may be miserable, kind of like how I was, how you were, And if you leave, that's the whole business. So I'm not
Yep.
really like, right. And so I started thinking about it in those terms, and I go, who do I need to hire? Who do I need to become? Because I also felt like I was holding back the agency. A lot of us do go
Hmm.
through that, and some of us will go take a job, or some people sell before they really can take it to the next level. Like if I go back, I really think we could have got that agency to over 100 million
Hmm.
with what I know now,
Yeah.
right? But when we sold, I was like, I think this is the top of the wave.
Yeah.
And
Little did you know, right?
for what yeah. But if
Yeah.
I started thinking like, well, what do the $100 million agencies think of? And go,
Yeah.
right. And so I kind of copped out, at that, but it led me to this, which gives me way more excitement, way more energy, even though I'm sick right now. So I'm sorry, I don't have all my energy, but
You're good. You're good. Yeah. So now you're coaching agencies mostly in a mastermind environment, following a framework that you built based on your experiences, right?
well, I don't. Yeah, I used to coach agencies, and what I do now is I just want to put the right people in the right seat in the community and let them have the best conversations, create the best relationships. That's what I was always looking for.
Hmm.
For me personally, I when I was coaching people, like I'm going to tell you everything I know within 3 months, and then I just felt like I was like, and they were drinking from a fire hose. But what I always, for me personally, even though I was always kind of a introvert, I was always thriving. I was wanting and I was thirsty for joining a community. So that's what we do now, and we just make our decisions based on what I wish I had or what I didn't have.
Hmm.
When I was running the first.
Yeah. Your hindsight lenses, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So you talk a lot about scaling. Do you think there's any kind of like a core fundamental difference between scaling and growth?
Well, scaling is with a purpose. Growth just happens. It could happen by accident, or it could, happen with intention.
Hmm.
Scaling is really kind of taking it to the next level. But I also challenge people too, right? Like when I chat with someone, I go, why do you want to scale? I want to scale to 10 million. Why do you want to
Yeah.
do that? Well, because that's a number. I'm like, well, what are you going to get that you don't have now?
Hmm.
And it all comes back to time or freedom. Or I'll be able to, I want to exit like you did. Well, then what?
Hmm.
Do you have a plan? If you don't have a plan, like I talk a lot of people out from selling that I'm
Same.
actually trying to buy, and my business partners get mad at me. I'm like, dude, you're making over $1 million a year. You're working 20 hours a week. You love what you're doing. What am I missing?
Hmm.
And they're like, you're right. I was like, well, but then they were like, well, I want to cash out. Like, you're making $1 million a year. Like, come on, dude. Like, all right, like, what's going on? And then I start going with them. I was like, well, I'm looking at your business. Like, I could probably double your EBITDA in the next year. Why don't you look at that
Hmm.
and like figure out those challenges? Unless they had a plan. Like, if they go, I want to be an airline pilot. Okay, go sell it. You have a plan. Go do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've gone through exercises like that where an owner is like, "Yeah, I want to exit. I've got this, person that's interested, and we'll go through the numbers." And I'll say, "All right, you exit now, and you take this money here, maybe over the course of a year or short earnout.
Yep.
But on the trajectory you're at, with as little as you're working, if you worked a little bit differently, you would make far more money in a short amount of time after sale." But yeah, if they said, listen, I want to sell, I want to take that money, I want to buy real estate, I want to do this, I want to do that, that's a whole different purpose. But just to sell for the sake of there's money on the table, there's more that can be done with a business with the right systems in place and the right people. Work 20 hours a week and make $1 million. That's a good formula right there.
Well, and you got to think too of like a lot of times I talk to these people and they're like, I love my team. I'm like, well,
Hmm.
why would you ever want to leave them?
Yeah.
Right? Like last year, someone offered us like $7 million to buy this business. I was like, no. Like I love what we're doing. I love my
Yeah.
team. Like, I don't want to and what this was very hard for me, and this would be very hard for everyone listening. You got to make decisions not based on money. And it's always the people with money that tell you this, and you're
Hmm.
like, you're full of shit, right? But honestly, if you like when you get to that point, you're looking back, and a lot of people can start transitioning before they actually have money. Like, turn down that bad prospect. I
Hmm.
don't care if that could be your biggest client, right? They're going to be a nightmare, and they'll make you hate the business.
Yeah.
Or someone offers you a ton of money to buy your agency, and then you don't have you know what to do next. Well, like, you're going to want to create the same thing, but it took you 5 years to get to the point to have this amazing team that you love hanging out with. Like, why? Like,
Yeah.
please take out the money decision. And
What are some of the other factors that you think they should kind of lean into as indicators of next step decisions?
Well, if you do need the money, like for health reasons, sell. If you know exactly what you want to do next, perfect, sell. If here's a one, and this is the reason I sold the first agency. My business partner was great that I started with, great person, but the business outgrew him, and I should have bought him out. But I thought by selling the agency, that was my way out of the easy way without having the hard conversation.
Mm.
Right? So a lot of people sell because they don't like their partner. But what you don't realize, and I bet if I went back to him, he probably felt the same way, not about me, but he felt like the business passed him by. And if I probably just went back and said, look, the business passed you by, how can I help you?
Hmm.
What do you want to do in this business? And how to really kind of start elevating him, I bet we would have kept doing it because we had an amazing team. Like,
Yeah.
it was such a fun team. Not as fun as the team I have now, but um, yeah, it was a fun team.
What held you back from having that difficult conversation with him?
Inexperience,
Mm.
immaturity. I mean, you got to think I was 34, so like, I don't know how old you are. You got some gray hair like me, so I don't know. You could
I'm
just
47, probably about the same.
Me too.
Yeah.
77. Yeah, there we go. Right. So, in the 30s, you don't know jack shit. You
Yeah.
think like the 20s, you think you know everything. And then the 30s are like, yeah, I definitely know everything. Until you get into man, I didn't start figuring out shit until probably like late or mid 40s.
Yeah. Wait, aren't we there now? We're in mids. What do you mean?
Yeah, I know. I'm just starting to figure things out. I won't ever
Hmm.
figure out everything. I'm,
No.
I'm experienced enough to say that, and I'm always learning.
Yeah.
So
Talk about this framework that you have. I mean, is it still something that's very prevalent in your groups? Is it something
yep.
that
Yeah,
talk through that?
yeah. When I started looking back at our success and going back to, you remember the origin story, and when I was about to close down the agency, the first system is really around clarity. Where do I want to go?
Hmm.
Why do I want to get there? Who do I want to go after? What can I actually provide to them? Right. And so you have to have that clarity, because if I'm driving a boat and I put all of my 100 people on this boat, and I don't tell anybody where I'm going, but then after about 12 hours of driving the boat, I'm like, hey, if the boat changes course, come wake me up. Well, they're waking me up every damn second. But if I just
Hmm.
say, hey, steer on a course of 280, cool. Like, if it turns to 282, they turn it 280,
Right.
right? And so it's easy on that. So that's the first system. The second system is around positioning. How can you position your agency so you don't look like everyone else? There's too
Mm.
many Me Too agencies out there, and all they do is talk about their people, their process, and their awards, which no one
Yeah.
cares about. So how can you change that positioning to look different, to really kind of stand out, be unique, pick a niche, whatever it is? The third, and then I'll shut up for a second, because the first three are really kind of the foundations, and you can ask questions and then we can move on. But the third is around offering. What's your offering? Not just, hey, I do SEO or pay per click, but how do you structure that to build trust, to make it an easy decision, right? To have like this, what I call the foot in the door offer, where it's a simple conversation where someone paid you for your advice that you're probably giving away for free now, that leads to solving a problem in a project, which then leads to a big ass retainer locked in for a couple of years versus a month-to-month contracts, which then you're not worth anything. So, that's the foundation. And then there's, a bunch of other systems after that.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Maybe it's always been like this, but when I look at agencies now, and probably because I'm looking at more agencies on a regular basis now, 98% of them all look the same. So it's such a refreshing breath of air when I come across an agency. It's like, you guys did the work. You actually do stand out in the crowd and look at the results.
Yeah, exactly.
And so whether they followed a framework or it's just, they went through, X, Y, and Z branding process that, the shoemaker's kids typically don't get, it's interesting to see how people can stand out.
Yeah. And you really can't move on until you have those three systems as your foundation. And then you can go to prospecting, right? Like there's too many agencies that go straight to prospecting. And then their prospecting is like spamming the hell out of people on LinkedIn. I'm like, well, that's one strategy. It's probably one I wouldn't probably just like, you could think about other ways to do it. But, in prospecting, I look at it as you need an inbound, an outbound, and a strategic partnership channel. Because if one comes down, you have the other two, or two comes down, you have another one. Because you can build your business to $1 million in revenue based on referrals. But then kind of scaling, like referrals aren't scalable. Just because you keep getting,
they're not dependable either.
No.
Even if you can hit $1 million, you're kind of second guessing when is that next 10K or 50K coming in. You can't plan for it. There's no actual pipeline based on it.
Yeah. And so that's the fourth system. The fifth system is about sales, right? How do you get the owner out of sales? How do you build the sales process from qualifying? Hey, here's a great question. How to get the budget from the prospect so you can see if they're legit within the first 15 minutes rather than wasting months, right? Or if the budget, like it took me, one of the things, I had this call back when people would call off a website rather than just fill out forms. And I chatted with this prospect and I just rocked the call, man. Like I was like, dude, there's no way they wouldn't go with me. And they invited me to their office. And this is when we lived in Atlanta. So there's lots of big companies there. And at that time, I didn't do any research. I was like, I'll go into it. I'll close it. I'm in my 20s. I know everything. And go into this boardroom. I'm like, damn, man, this room is big. Like all these people start funneling in suits and ties. Like I'm kind of like with a button down and jeans, right? That's kind of my vibe. And I'm like, okay. So I go through the presentation and they go, what's the cost to do this? So I was like, $20K. And they all kind of like chuckled and laughed. I'm like, what the hell? So I go back to the office and my business partner was like, what'd they say? I'm like, man, they were really into it. And then I told them price and they're kind of laughing. It's like, well, what was the company? I don't know. Some company, Brookshire or something. He's like, Berkshire Hathaway? I was like, yeah, that's it. He's like, hey, dumbass. This is like one of the biggest companies in the world. Well, they were anticipating like 300,000. Right. And if I asked the budget, I would have been like, hell yeah, man, like 300 grand. Amazing. We're matched. It's super, it's fate. So like figuring out a sales process, in order to, win the prospect. And then the next system is around delivery. How do you onboard clients? How do you, and I really want people to think about how do you onboard clients? Because you ring the bell about you winning the client, but the prospect is automatically having buyer's remorse and going, did I make the right decision?
Yep.
And the first 90 days are the most important to reassure that they made the right decision, to start showing them some results where you can grow that account. Because we're not just getting accounts to get an account. We want to get that account and grow it.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot easier to grow an account than just to sell new ones all the time.
It's a heck of a lot cheaper too.
Yeah. And then, in the delivery system, you got to think about too of, scope creep, have, some kind of a way to avoid most of scope creep, or to make sure you're staying on task. How do you, deliver the results that you said you're going to do? Because if you don't deliver results, and if you don't track your results, how many clients you talk to, they were like, you ask them like, what do you charge? Man, that seems kind of low. What's the value you provide? They're like, I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm like, well, shit, your clients don't know. So you got to think
Yep.
about that. And then after delivery, there's operation and leadership. Operations is about hiring and putting the right structure in the agency. And then the leadership is, what are the roles for you as an owner to transform to a CEO?
Yeah.
And I always looked at it this way. You need to set the vision, communicate it to your team so they can make the right decision. Because before you do this, they're making a decision, but what's best for them, not what's best for the agency. The second is, I need to coach and mentor my leadership team, not everyone. If you have everyone reporting to you, you're doing it wrong.
Yep.
Third, I need to be the face of the organization. Fourth is, I need to understand the KPIs. I don't need to be a spreadsheet nerd and whiz kid on that. I was never that. I was horrible at math. If you made me do any arithmetic, I would be like, I don't fucking know. Let me ask, a calculator. And
Yep.
then the fifth role is, you're building strategic partnerships and relationships that no one else can. Now, when you get these roles, I'm going to tell you, you're going to be completely and utterly depressed, because then you're going to go into a meeting, in your creative meeting. Oh, I don't need you. I'll go into your marketing meeting. I don't need you. I'll go into sales meeting. I don't need you. And then you'll be like, you'll go to your spouse or your significant other and be like, agency doesn't need me anymore. Well, hey, the agency needs you for these new roles, not
Yep.
what you used to do. So those are the 8 systems that are, they'll stand the test of time, and they work for any business, any
Yeah.
service-based business.
Silly question. As you were getting to like maybe 7 or 8, is there an acronym that all each of those phases builds out, or is
No,
that okay? All right.
no, I could never figure
I
that
was
out.
wondering that along the way. Yeah. All
Yeah,
right. Don't force it.
yeah, no,
But yeah, I mean those are like the winning. That's a winning formula in the right order, as far as like how do we build these things? How do we position? Close business, build that business, deliver the right work, and get me out of the day to day. And man, that I don't even know what you would actually call it. That feeling of like they don't, I don't need to be creative director. I don't need to onboard the client. I don't need to set up the files in the Google Drive. Like people are doing what they've been
yeah.
brought on to do for the betterment of the entire agency. It's not all on me. Like what a great feeling, but also kind of a shitty feeling too. Yeah.
Well, but once you start realizing it, and here's the deal: like one of our Audra, one of our members, we told her, was like, you got to get out of sales, and she going through the framework. She got out of sales. Business started growing like gangbusters.
Mm-hmm.
But she was depressed because the end of the sales process was what gave her energy. So, the group was like, hey, why don't you just add color? Why don't you get back? Like, and I told her, I said, look, it's, you're using these systems to remove you from the roles, but you still can do the roles that you love doing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I always did. Now, I didn't have to. I always did the first meeting with our clients on the creative process. I always led that. I didn't have
Mm-hmm.
to, but I loved it. And I'm sure there was people better than me on the team, but I loved it, so I did it. And so just keep that in mind as well.
Yeah. So, maybe so, maybe not, kind of a final question. Is there a point or size of an agency where that formula, the agency is too small for that formula to win for?
No, so you're my same age, which I'm going to ask you a question. Do you remember the game Age of Empires?
I don't.
Oh, you don't? Oh,
No.
so
I have to look it up.
it was this like strategy game that I remember playing in college. And what it was is, you start at the like the Stone Age. And what you do is you acquire more wood, food, and gold. And then as you hit a certain level, so let's say 100% on each, then you move up to the next age. And so these 8 systems, they do change, But every level that you hit, then you have to go back. Do I have the clarity? Am I positioned
Right.
in the right way? Do I have the right offering for this? Do I have the right prospecting? Right. And so I always tell people kind of look at these 8 systems and go through it each year to figure out where you're at. And a lot of things you have to reset.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess, at 3 people, or let's call it $250,000 in revenue, you're not having a full sales team in place, or you're not
Correct.
even having to sales anybody in place. You're still doing a lot as the owner. But as that grows, you're able to build out different systems and delegate more and put more people in place. And it's all revenue driven. So, yeah. It's solid system, man. I love it. Appreciate you sharing it with everybody.
Yep.
I want to switch gears real quick. Couple random rapid fire questions for you. First is, what's something that you're binging the heck out of that you can't get enough of? Podcast, book, show, whatever.
I starting to learn the guitar again. So I'm binging the hell out of every year I want to learn something. Last year I learned how to fly airplanes. And so this year is learning the guitar. So I'm binging the hell out of the chords and the strumming. And
Yeah.
I'm horrible right now. Like
I hope you have more success with that than I did, because during COVID I tried, and I'm just so unmusical. And I did the Fender app, I did the YouTube University, I did there's another app, but I just couldn't figure out how to connect music with my hands. I'm just not musical, so I kind of surrendered and gave it up. So I hope you're more successful than I was.
Yeah.
What's a tool that you recently integrated into your life, business, professional, digital, physical, that you're like, how did I live without this thing?
Recently, or been using for a while?
For a while.
I would probably say for personal, ForeFlight. It's an app we use as pilots, but I use it all the time to predict the weather. And it's pretty neat. It's pretty accurate.
Interesting. That'd be good for a lot of things beyond just flying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in a year you can learn to be a pilot. Isn't it a much longer process than that?
I mean, you're always learning.
Okay.
But no, it took me 8 months to get my license.
Sweet. On like single prop or
a single
like
engine?
Yeah. I'm talking about. Yeah. Okay.
Cessna. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Good for you, man. Finally, what is an invaluable piece of business advice that you can share with anybody listening?
Focus. Finish one commitment till success. That's what it means. And you got to just be, you just got to know where you're going. And whatever happens, you just keep pushing through and just be consistent, right? Like, for example, with the Smart Agency Masterclass podcast, we've been doing it for a decade.
Wow.
Do you know how many people like quit after 1 episode or quit before 10 episodes? Like, the numbers are astonishing. Like, how many episodes do you have here?
You are 74, 75.
So because you made it over 10 episodes, you're in the top 1% of podcasters. Isn't that crazy?
Yes. I'm there. I've arrived.
You've arrived.
Whatever that means. Yeah. No, I fully get with that, man. Just stick with something. Pick a thing, get the vision, and stick with it. Yeah. Jason, I am super grateful for your time, sharing your experience with everybody. So thank you very much.
Yep. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks again for tuning in to Agency Bytes. If you know someone with expert knowledge on a topic that agency owners would love to hear about, go to agencyoutsight.com/podcast-guest and nominate them.